In 1941, 20th Century Fox released Belle Starr, a sweeping Technicolor Western that introduced audiences to a glamorous Confederate rebel queen. On screen, she was a fierce warrior fighting an honorable war against corrupt Northern forces. The movie culminates in a highly dramatic climax where she sacrifices herself to save the man she loves. As she dies a martyr's death, enslaved people are shown whispering that she hasn't really died. She has simply become an immortal legend. Almost every single frame of that portrayal is a complete fabrication, carefully engineered to sanitize one of the most brutal eras of American history. Belle Starr lived her life in the Indian Territory of the late 19th century, a violent, fractured, and deeply impoverished ecosystem devoid of romantic heroism. This was a landscape of lawlessness. The situation was so chaotic and deadly that a common saying echoed across the frontier: "There is no Sunday west of St. Louis and no God west of Fort Smith." To understand the real Belle Starr, we have to strip away the costumes and examine the squalid, lethal reality she actually lived through. The historical record shows that Myra May Belle Shirley, the woman who became Belle Starr, likely desired a quiet, domestic life rather than the burden of leading a criminal empire. However, her proximity to violent men made peace impossible. Her first husband, Jim Reed, was murdered by a friend looking to collect a bounty. Her second husband, Bruce Younger, vanished from the record until his mummified body was allegedly discovered in a cave. Her third husband, Sam Starr, was killed in a gunfight. Her other associates met similar fates, including the outlaw Blue Duck, who was convicted of murdering a farmer and sentenced to hang. Calling her a gang leader misreads the evidence. Looking at the bodies piling up around her, Myra Mabel Shirley emerges as a woman whose life was defined by simple survival inside a deadly web of doomed outlaws. The men hunting those outlaws were the U.S. Marshals, operating out of Fort Smith, Arkansas. This small group of deputies faced the impossible task of policing 74,000 square miles of anarchy. These deputies received no base salary. They were paid on a strict fee system, earning money per capture and by the mile. Because they were hunting highly dangerous men to secure those bounties, the financial incentives practically guaranteed their encounters would end in lethal force. If an outlaw was brought back alive, they faced Judge Isaac C. Parker. Known across the frontier as the hanging judge, Parker was the relentless destination for anyone caught breaking the law in the territory. The justice system Parker oversaw was just as foul as the crimes he punished. In this 1888 letter, Marshal John Carroll writes to the Attorney General to expose a massive sanitation crisis in the Fort Smith jail, describing the unendurable stench caused by a bucket of excrement sitting in each of the 72 cells. Continuing on to the second page, Carroll explains that carting that waste a mile outside of town twice a day would completely exhaust their budget, and he begs for funds to install basic water closets. This letter reveals the grim truth of the era. The actual frontier consisted of a foul, desperate, and muddy struggle for survival that claimed lives on both sides of the law. Despite the legendary tales of grand train robberies, Belle Starr's actual criminal record is remarkably brief. Her only major conviction was a mundane charge for horse theft, which resulted in a 9-month stint in a Detroit prison. The myth of her criminal empire traces back to how she presented herself to the public. In this photograph, Belle Starr deliberately poses, wearing a dark velvet dress, gripping a pistol in one hand and a riding whip in the other. She wanted to look dangerous. That single photograph, combined with her proximity to a long list of dead outlaws, provided sensationalist writers with all the raw material they needed to invent the Bandit Queen. In the movies, she dies a glorious martyr. In reality, on a cold day in February 1889, someone ambushed Belle Starr on a dirt road in Oklahoma and shot her clean off her horse into the mud. Her murder was never solved. The prime suspects were her own son, her daughter, and a disgruntled farmer who rented land from her. No heroic lawman was involved in her end. An anonymous, sudden death over a petty grudge perfectly encapsulates how cheap and unglamorous life and death actually were in the Indian Territory. Why do we lie about it? Why did dime novelists and 20th century film producers work so hard to transform this bleak, dirty reality into a vibrant romantic epic? The truth of the frontier is hard to digest. Inventing a colorful bandit queen takes the raw poverty, the desperate conditions, and the random violence, and makes it palatable for a mass audience. Belle Starr's enduring legend provides almost no actual historical record of a mastermind criminal. Instead, it proves our culture's endless desire to take a messy, violent history and scrub it clean until it looks like a blockbuster movie.